Have you ever looked in the mirror and wondered why, despite being surrounded by people, you still feel completely alone? I once met a woman who told me, "I don't really have any close friends, but I'm fine with it." But as she spoke, her eyes said something different. They said, "I'm tired of being strong by myself." This isn't just about friendship, it's about connection. And connection, true connection, is the foundation of every healthy relationship you'll ever have, whether it's with a partner, a family member, or yourself. Why does love feel so hard? Why does something that's supposed to be the most natural human experience feel like a constant uphill battle? Most people think the problem is timing or finding the right person or bad luck. But the truth is, the problem usually isn't out there, it's in here. It's in how we approach love, how we define it, and how we let fear shape it long before love even arrives. When love feels exhausting, it's almost always because it's rooted in confusion. We mistake attraction for compatibility. We mistake intensity for intimacy. And we mistake someone else's attention for proof of our value. That confusion makes us chase love as if it's running away from us, as if we have to earn it or prove ourselves worthy of it. But love isn't meant to be hunted down. It's meant to grow where there's safety, clarity, and respect. Think about the last time you found yourself overthinking a relationship. You checked your phone every 10 minutes, wondering if they would text back. You replayed every word of the last conversation, asking yourself, did I say too much? Did I seem too interested? Did I do something wrong? That's not love. That's anxiety dressed up as romance. And the reason so many people live there is because they learned early on that love is conditional. They learned to chase approval, to earn affection, to prove their worth rather than simply rest in it. The truth is simple, even if it's hard to hear. You can't make someone love you by working harder. You can't make a relationship last by sacrificing yourself. And you can't force connection where it doesn't naturally exist. The harder you chase love, the faster it runs away, not because people are cruel, but because desperation has an energy that repels rather than attracts. Real love doesn't feel like begging. It feels like breathing. When you're with someone who's right for you, you're not constantly auditioning for their affection. You're not trying to convince them of your value. You're not scared that if you stop performing, they'll stop loving you. Healthy love is calm, it's honest. It's reciprocal. It grows in the open, not in the shadows of manipulation and guessing games. But here's the paradox: the only way to attract that kind of love is to stop chasing it. You have to become someone who no longer needs to be chosen to feel valuable. When your sense of worth doesn't rise or fall based on whether someone texts you back, you become magnetic. When you stop treating love like a scarce resource and start treating yourself like someone worth knowing, you create a life that draws the right people in naturally. So why is that so difficult? Because we've been conditioned to believe love is something we must earn. If you grew up being praised only when you achieved something or only when you were good, you probably learned to perform for love. You learned that love is a reward, not a gift. That belief shows up everywhere in adult relationships. It's why you tolerate people who give you crumbs of affection. It's why you bend over backwards to make relationships work while ignoring whether they're actually healthy. But love isn't a prize for good behavior. It's not given because you're perfect, it's given because you're human. And when you understand that, you stop overcompensating. You stop twisting yourself into shapes to fit into other people's expectations. Instead, you show up as yourself fully, unapologetically, without shrinking or performing. And that's what makes you truly attractive. Let's talk about what chasing really looks like. Chasing isn't just calling someone too much or begging them to stay. Chasing is over investing emotionally before you really know who you're dealing with. Chasing is trying to prove to someone that you're worthy instead of letting them prove they deserve access to you. Chasing is overthinking every interaction because deep down you believe love is scarce and you can't afford to lose this one shot. And where does that belief come from? Scarcity in childhood, scarcity in past relationships, scarcity in how you see yourself. You've convinced yourself that love is something rare, something you only find once in a lifetime, something you better hold on to no matter the cost. But love isn't scarce. What's scarce is self-worth. When you lack that, love feels like survival instead of choice. So how do you shift from chasing to attracting? First, you have to get clear on who you are when nobody's watching. Who are you when you're not performing for love? What do you actually want in a partner? Not what looks good on paper, not what your friends would approve of, but what you genuinely need to feel safe, alive, and understood. If you've never answered that question, you'll accept anything that feels familiar, even if it hurts you. You have to build a life so fulfilling that love becomes an addition, not a rescue. When you have passions, friendships, and a sense of purpose outside of romance, you naturally stop clinging to people who don't fit. You're not desperate to fill a void because your life is already full. You're not begging someone to choose you because you've already chosen yourself. That's when love becomes a choice between equals rather than a power struggle. You must learn to sit with discomfort without rushing to fix it. The reason people chase is because they can't handle uncertainty. If someone pulls back, they panic. They text more, call more, try harder. But healthy love requires space for both people to be themselves. If you're secure, you don't freak out when someone takes a step back. You don't assume the worst. You trust that if the connection is real, it will survive a little breathing room. You need to raise your standards, not just for who you date, but for how you treat yourself in the process. Stop rewarding inconsistency with more effort. Stop investing in people who haven't earned it. Stop making excuses for behavior you'd tell your best friend to walk away from. When you act like someone valuable, people start to treat you like someone valuable, or they disappear. Either way, you win. The irony is, the less you need love, the more love comes to you. Not because you're playing games or pretending not to care, but because confidence is magnetic. People are drawn to those who are grounded, secure, and at peace with themselves. When you live with clarity and purpose, you stop chasing and start attracting. You stop settling for whoever shows up and start choosing who gets to stay. Why does love feel so hard? Because most people are trying to solve an internal problem with an external solution. They're trying to fix loneliness with a relationship instead of learning how to be whole first. They're trying to prove their worth through someone else's validation instead of discovering it on their own. Love feels simple once you do the inner work. Once you're secure, you stop forcing connections. You let love come to you. You let people reveal who they are instead of projecting what you hope they'll be. And why should you stop chasing and start attracting? Because the love you're desperate for isn't real love. It's fear dressed up as passion. It's insecurity masquerading as desire. When you stop chasing, you create room for someone who chooses you freely, not because you begged, not because you convinced them, but because they see your value on their own. That's the love that lasts. That's the love that doesn't require you to lose yourself to keep it. You can share a bed with someone every night and still feel completely alone. You can talk to them every day, go on vacations, post smiling photos together, and deep down feel like no one truly sees you. That's the silent heartbreak of loneliness in love. It's not about being single, it's about being with someone who doesn't meet you emotionally. And the tragedy is that so many people stay in that place, convincing themselves that this is just how relationships are supposed to feel. Loneliness in love starts small. At first, you brush it off. Maybe your partner seems distracted when you speak. Maybe you don't feel safe bringing up what's really bothering you. Maybe you're always the one initiating conversations that actually matter. And instead of confronting it, you tell yourself, it's just a phase. They're busy. I shouldn't be so needy. But the longer you ignore that emptiness, the more it grows. You start to wonder if you're asking for too much when really you're just asking for the basics: to be heard, to be understood, to be emotionally connected. What makes this even more dangerous is when people confuse physical closeness with intimacy. Just because someone's body is next to yours doesn't mean their heart is. Just because you live together doesn't mean you're building a life together. Without emotional intimacy, a relationship becomes hollow, like a beautiful house with no furniture inside. And here's the truth: no one wants to admit that hollow feeling is a warning sign. It's a quiet whisper saying, something's missing, pay attention. But instead of paying attention, many people do what's easiest. They turn away from the discomfort and start ignoring the red flags. And these red flags aren't always dramatic. They're not always screaming in your face. Sometimes they're subtle. Sometimes it's not cheating or lying. It's little things like consistent indifference, broken promises, lack of curiosity about who you really are. You know something's off, but you push it down because admitting it would mean admitting this relationship isn't what you hoped it would be. Ignoring those early signals comes with a cost. Every time you dismiss that uneasy feeling, you trade a piece of your peace just to keep the relationship alive. You silence your own intuition so you can hold on to the illusion of love. And the longer you do it, the more expensive it gets. You pay with your confidence, with your mental health, with years you'll never get back. Why do we do this? Why do intelligent, loving people ignore obvious signs that something is wrong? Because facing the truth feels terrifying. If you admit the relationship is broken, you have to admit you may have to start over. You have to admit you invested your heart in someone who can't meet you where you are. And nobody wants to feel like they made a mistake. So instead, you tell yourself stories. You convince yourself that their silence is just stress. Their coldness is just temporary. You promise yourself that if you just love them harder, they'll change. But love doesn't work that way. Loving someone harder doesn't make them emotionally available. Being endlessly patient doesn't turn inconsistency into commitment. You can't heal someone by abandoning yourself. You can't build intimacy with someone who isn't willing to show up with you. Loneliness in love isn't fixed by working harder. It's fixed by working wiser. It's fixed by recognizing that emotional intimacy, feeling truly seen, valued, and understood, isn't a luxury, it's a requirement. Without it, no amount of romance, money, or chemistry will sustain a relationship. And if you ignore that lack of intimacy, it becomes fertile ground for resentment, for betrayal, for the kind of heartbreak that leaves scars long after the relationship ends. I once spoke to someone who said, I knew he wasn't right for me 6 months in, but I stayed 5 more years. Why? Because acknowledging the red flags felt harder than living with them. But those extra years weren't free. She paid for them with her self-esteem. Every time she overlooked a broken promise or excused his lack of effort, she trained herself to expect less. That's the real cost of ignoring red flags. They don't just reveal who the other person is, they reveal what you're willing to tolerate. And what you tolerate, you teach people how to give you. Here's the hard truth: the discomfort of walking away early is nothing compared to the devastation of staying too long. When you leave early, you grieve the hope of what could have been. When you stay too long, you grieve the person you had to become just to survive the relationship. So how do you stop living lonely inside love? How do you stop ignoring the signs that a relationship isn't healthy? First, you have to stop romanticizing potential. Potential isn't love. Someone's ability to be amazing one day doesn't change how they treat you right now. If they're dismissive today, inconsistent today, emotionally unavailable today, that's who they are, at least for now. And if you fall in love with potential, you're not in love with them, you're in love with your imagination. You have to trust your discomfort. That little knot in your stomach, that feeling that something is off, that's not insecurity, that's wisdom. Your body knows when you're unsafe emotionally. Your heart knows when you're being neglected. Stop gaslighting yourself. If it feels wrong, it's because something is wrong. You must raise the price of access to your heart. Stop giving people discounts on your love. Stop excusing bad behavior just because you're afraid of being alone. Being alone for a while will not destroy you, but being half loved for years will. If someone can't meet your emotional needs, it's not your job to lower them. It's your job to walk away and make space for someone who can. You have to understand that real love will never require you to betray yourself. The right person won't make you feel invisible. They won't punish you for having feelings. They won't make you guess where you stand. You won't have to beg for their attention, and you won't feel like you're walking on eggshells to keep them close. Real love feels safe. It feels mutual. It feels like two people leaning toward each other, not one person chasing while the other runs. When you refuse to ignore red flags, you send a powerful message, not just to others, but to yourself. You tell yourself, I am worth consistency, I am worth respect. I am worth love that feels like peace, not war. And when you believe that, you naturally stop settling for relationships that drain you. You stop feeling lonely in love because you stop accepting partners who can't meet you where you are. Loneliness in love isn't cured by staying busy or pretending everything is fine. It's cured by being brave enough to face the truth. And that truth might be hard at first, but it's always liberating. You deserve a relationship where your heart is not just tolerated, but cherished, where your emotions are not dismissed, but welcomed, where love doesn't feel like an empty room, but like a home you can actually rest in. And you deserve to walk away from anything less. No matter how long you've stayed, no matter how much you've invested, no matter how scared you are to start over. Because starting over with yourself, respect intact, is always better than staying stuck in something that's slowly erasing you. There's a question people rarely ask out loud, but it lingers in the back of their minds every time they feel torn between their heart and their sanity. Why do I keep loving people who hurt me? You'd think pain would make love weaker, but for so many, it makes it stronger. You'd think betrayal would push you away, but somehow it pulls you in. It doesn't make sense at first glance, but there's an emotional logic behind it, and understanding that logic is the key to setting yourself free. We don't fall for people who hurt us because we're weak. We fall for them because something inside us is trying to rewrite an old story. If love felt inconsistent when you were younger, if affection had to be earned, if approval came in bursts rather than steady waves, then inconsistency feels familiar. When someone gives you affection one moment and pulls it away the next, you feel challenged, almost compelled to prove you can make them love you fully. That's not romance. That's unfinished business. Your heart is trying to win from them what you didn't win from someone else. But here's the problems. You can't heal the past through someone who's hurting you in the present. No matter how hard you love, you can't transform another person's wounds. You can't turn someone unreliable into someone steady just by giving them more chances. When you stay in relationships with people who hurt you, hoping your loyalty will inspire them to change, you're confusing love with rescue. But love is not rescue. Love is not supposed to feel like a mission to save someone at the cost of yourself. Think about how much energy you've spent justifying behavior you would never tolerate from a stranger. You explain away the broken promises. You downplay the emotional distance. You tell yourself they're just stressed, they're just confused, they didn't mean it. But deep down you know, this isn't love, at least not the kind of love that nourishes you. This is attachment mixed with fear. Fear of being alone, fear of starting over, fear that maybe you'll never find someone else who makes you feel this intensity. But here's the truth: intensity isn't love, chaos isn't chemistry. If someone's hot and cold behavior gives you butterflies, those butterflies aren't romance, they're anxiety. And anxiety is not a foundation for a healthy relationship. So how do you stop loving someone who hurts you? You don't do it by hating them. You don't do it by pretending they're all bad or trying to erase the good memories. You do it by telling yourself the truth: I deserve love that doesn't hurt. You do it by stepping back far enough to see the full pattern, not just the highlights. When you're in the middle of the story, it feels like every loving gesture cancels out every cruel one. But when you step back, you see the story as a whole, and the whole story tells you whether this person is really good for you. Stop lying to yourself about what love should feel like. Love is not supposed to be exhausting. It's not supposed to make you question your worth. It's not supposed to require you to become smaller so someone else can feel bigger. If love constantly hurts, it's not love. It's attachment dressed as love. Break the cycle of over-giving. You can't heal someone by giving up yourself. You can't teach someone to value you by making endless sacrifices. People don't learn to treat you better because you tolerate their mistreatment. They learn to treat you better because you stop tolerating it. And that brings us to one of the hardest lessons in relationships. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away. Walking away is not failure. It's not weakness. It's not giving up on love. Walking away is choosing yourself when someone else refuses to. It's saying, I'm willing to lose you rather than lose myself. That's power. And it's terrifying because we're conditioned to believe holding on is proof of love. But holding on to pain isn't noble, it's self-destructive. You can love someone and still leave them. You can love someone and still say, this isn't healthy for me. People often think walking away means you didn't care enough. But the truth is you walk away because you finally care enough about yourself. And that shift is everything. The moment you realize you deserve love that's steady, not chaotic, love that uplifts, not depletes, you stop negotiating with your own soul. This doesn't mean you stop loving the person overnight. The heart doesn't shut off like a light switch. But walking away isn't about erasing your love, it's about protecting your life. It's about refusing to let someone else's wounds become the prison you live in. When you stay in relationships that hurt you, you slowly teach yourself to expect pain as normal. Your standards drop without you even noticing. You stop recognizing yourself. You compromise until there's nothing left to compromise. That's why walking away is so powerful. It resets your standard. It says to your own soul, I will not trade my peace for someone else's chaos ever again. The moment you walk away, everything changes. At first, it's messy. You'll miss them. You'll question yourself. You'll replay the good moments in your head. That's natural. But over time, you start to see what you couldn't see before, how much energy you were wasting trying to earn love that should have been freely given. You begin to realize that love isn't something you have to fight for, beg for, or prove yourself worthy of. Real love doesn't ask you to bleed to keep it alive. And then something even deeper happens. You start to trust yourself again. You start to hear your own voice, the voice you silenced every time you ignored a red flag. That voice says, I am worthy of more. I am strong enough to be alone if I have to be. I am no longer afraid of starting over because I'd rather start over than stay broken. That's when walking away stops feeling like loss and starts feeling like freedom. You also begin to see that the person you walked away from isn't the villain of your story. They're the teacher. They showed you where you didn't value yourself enough. They revealed the places where you were willing to settle. And instead of resenting them forever, you use the lesson. You take back your power. You choose differently next time. When you learn to stop loving people who hurt you, you're not becoming cold or bitter. You're becoming clear. You're learning to distinguish between love and attachment, between chemistry and chaos, between passion and pain. And when you combine that clarity with the courage to walk away, your whole world shifts. You stop begging for love because you realize you were worthy of it all along. The power of walking away isn't about proving a point to someone else. It's about proving a point to yourself. It's not about making them regret losing you. It's about making sure you don't regret losing yourself. You're not leaving to punish them. You're leaving to protect your own soul. And here's the beautiful part. The moment you truly embrace that power, you stop attracting relationships that hurt you. People can sense when you have standards. They can sense when you know your worth. You no longer cling to people out of fear. And because of that, you stop drawing in those who feed on fear. Instead, you attract people who meet you where you are, because you've finally met yourself there first. It's hard to stop loving someone who hurts you. Yes, it's hard to walk away from a person you've built your world around. But what's harder? Staying in a relationship that erases you little by little until you forget who you are. That's the real heartbreak. Not losing them, but losing yourself while you're still with them. You deserve a love that feels like home, not a battlefield. You deserve a love that builds you up instead of tearing you down. And the first step to finding that love is having the strength to walk away from anything less. You don't walk away because you don't love them. You walk away because you finally learned to love yourself enough to stop settling for pain. There comes a moment in life when you wake up and feel like there's nothing left inside you. Not anger, not even sadness, just emptiness. The kind of silence that's louder than any scream. You stare at the ceiling in the dark, wondering how you became so numb, how the things you used to care about feel distant, how the people you love can stand right in front of you and yet seem miles away. And in that moment, you wonder if there's any strength left in you at all. But here's the truth: emptiness doesn't mean you're weak. It means you've been strong for too long without refueling. It means you've carried weight after weight without putting anything down. You've been the one holding it together for everyone else, and you forgot that even the strongest shoulders need rest. That feeling of emptiness is not a sign that you're broken beyond repair. It's a sign that you're human, and it's an invitation to rebuild. Finding strength when you feel empty is not about forcing yourself to be positive. It's not about plastering a smile on your face or chanting affirmations you don't believe. Strength isn't pretending you're fine when you're not. Strength is honesty. It's sitting with the void inside you long enough to ask, what's missing? What have I been denying myself? Where did I stop listening to my own soul? Sometimes emptiness shows up because you've been living a life that doesn't belong to you. You've been saying yes to everyone else's expectations while quietly saying no to yourself. You've been playing roles instead of living truth. When you betray yourself long enough, eventually your heart goes quiet. Not because it's gone, but because it's tired of screaming over the noise. So how do you find strength in that silence? You stop running from it. You let yourself feel the emptiness without judgment. You treat it like a guest who's trying to tell you something. Because buried in that emptiness is a message. It's time to let go of what's draining you. It's time to take your power back. Strength doesn't come from pushing harder when you're already on empty. Strength comes from refilling. It comes from giving yourself permission to rest, to heal, to do nothing if you have to. We live in a world that worships constant hustle, constant productivity, constant grinding forward. But real strength is not speed. Real strength is alignment. You don't need to move faster, you need to move truer. And that's where rebuilding begins. Because at some point, emptiness leads to another realization: I can't keep living this way. That realization hurts, but it's also sacred, because it's the doorway to a new life. Rebuilding yourself after being broken is not about becoming who you used to be. It's not about gluing the old pieces back together. You're not supposed to go back to before. You're supposed to become someone new, someone wiser, deeper, and more authentic. The cracks in you are not weaknesses. They are entry points for light. When something or someone shatters you, it feels like an ending. But it's actually a beginning. Think about a seed. It has to break open before it can grow. You're the same way. Your heartbreak, your loss, your failure, they didn't destroy you. They cracked you open so something greater could emerge. The first step to rebuilding is forgiveness, not necessarily for the people who hurt you, but for yourself. Forgive yourself for staying too long. Forgive yourself for trusting the wrong people. Forgive yourself for not knowing better at the time. You're not weak because you loved. You're not foolish because you cared. You're human. And being human means learning through pain as much as through joy. Deciding what no longer belongs in your life. Brokenness has a way of clarifying things. When you've been hurt deeply, you see more clearly what truly matters and what never did. You stop having patience for shallow relationships, for meaningless distractions, for people who only show up when they need something. Your soul gets stripped down to the essentials: peace, purpose, love that's real. Start small. Rebuilding yourself isn't done overnight. You don't wake up one day and suddenly feel whole again. You rebuild brick by brick. Maybe that means starting with one habit. Waking up and drinking water before you check your phone, writing down one thing you're grateful for even if it feels forced. going for a walk just to feel the sun. Those tiny acts are not insignificant. They are proof to yourself that you're still here, still fighting, still worthy of care. As you do this, you'll notice something. Strength doesn't arrive all at once. It sneaks back into your life quietly. One day you'll catch yourself laughing again. One day you'll realize you went an entire hour without thinking about the person who broke your heart. One day you'll wake up excited about something small, and that's when you'll know you're healing. Rebuilding also requires courage to dream again. When you've been broken, your mind tells you to stay small so you won't get hurt again. But staying small is its own kind of pain. You're not meant to live hiding behind walls. You're meant to live in the open, to risk loving, to risk hoping, to risk trying again even after you've failed. That's not la vie. That's brave. Eventually, you'll look back on your emptiness and brokenness with gratitude. You'll see that what felt like an ending was actually preparation. The version of you that's emerging, stronger, clearer, more self-respecting, couldn't have existed without that breaking. You had to lose who you weren't to become who you are. And one day, you'll meet someone, maybe a friend, maybe a partner, maybe just a stranger passing through your life. And they'll see the strength in you. They'll see how deeply you love without losing yourself. They'll see the quiet power you carry now, and you'll realize that every scar was worth it because it taught you how to honor yourself. Finding strength when you feel empty and rebuilding after you're broken are not two separate journeys. They're the same path. You find strength by allowing yourself to rebuild. And you rebuild by learning that the strength you were searching for was inside you all along. Buried under pain, but never gone. Your emptiness is not your enemy. Your brokenness is not your identity. They are chapters, not your whole story. And the fact that you're still here listening to these words means you already have more strength than you think. You've survived every dark night of your soul so far. And that means you have everything you need to rise again. Not as the old you, but as the real you. So, to every woman listening who feels alone, don't wear your isolation as a badge of honor. Wear your desire for connection as a sign of strength. The friendships you cultivate today are the foundation for every healthy relationship tomorrow. Because a woman with no friends isn't unbothered, she's unprotected. And you deserve to be surrounded, supported, and celebrated, not just by one person, but by a tribe that reminds you who you are when life tries to make you forget.